Turning now to the upcoming congressional vote on the Employment Non-Discrimination Act, which would protect employees on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identity, including transgender and transsexual teachers. Supporters and opponents are getting ready for what will most likely be a polarizing debate. And so joining me to discuss it are Allyson Robinson, Associate Director of Diversity for the Human Rights Campaign, and Andrea Lafferty. She's Executive Director of the Traditional Values Coalition. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining us today.
Thanks, Nancy.
So, Allyson, let's start off with you. Explain to us exactly what ENDA does and why you think it's important.
Well, you know, most Americans don't realize that in 29 states in this country, it's perfectly legal to fire someone for being gay just because you don't like gay people. In 38 states, perfectly legal to fire someone for being transgender just because you don't like transgender people. What ENDA does is it takes what a majority of Americans do recognize as a fundamental value of fairness in the workplace. We judge people on the basis of the work that they perform and not on the basis of how they look or what they do outside of work. And it applies that standard to federal law.
And where does the legislation stand right now?
Well, currently, ENDA in the House of Representatives has 199 co-sponsors. That's 199 members of the House who have put their name on the line as supporting this piece of legislation, recognizing that their constituents support it as well. And it is currently on its way, probably out of committee within the next couple of weeks, into a full vote on the House floor.
Andrea, you have said that having transgender teachers in the classroom would put children in harm's way. Why do you say that?
Well, I think, first of all, the timeline's been pushed back. Barney Frank has promised to vote either tomorrow or the following Wednesday. I don't think it's going to happen because members don't want to have to walk the plank. Many members of Congress don't understand that this bill will override the law in 38 states, and it will make it so that a school district and a local school will be unable to make hiring decisions regarding transgender teachers. If an individual comes and says to the principal, I am a man, I'm going to become a woman by next year, the teacher cannot be reassigned out of the classroom. That would be illegal.
Why do you think they should be
We
reassigned?
believe that children need a safe environment in which to learn. And the bottom line is the APA says people with gender identity disorder.
You're talking about the American Psychological
The American
Association?
Psychiatric Association says that gender identity is a mental disorder. Why are we giving our school children over to people with a serious mental disorder?
Well, you know, first off, I've got to say, I find that profoundly offensive.
Well, you know, I'm sorry if you do, but the bottom line is you have been diagnosed with a mental disorder.
You know,
and so this is
I think that goes to show that you don't really understand psychology.
I'm here with a person who was born a man who identifies now as a woman, and that will be very confusing to children.
Well, you know, what about my children, Andrea?
Well,
you know,
your
my children are not
very
confused.
Well, but we're talking
my children
about
know what their gender is, and they know what mine
children.
is.
And I think once again, Speaker Pelosi is going to ask these conservative Democrats to walk the plank on a highly controversial issue, putting transgender teachers in the classroom. And then, of course, the effect it will have on businesses, Christian businesses. But again, we're focusing right now on the fact of how children will be affected.
How do you think children would be affected?
Well, you know, I'm a parent. I have 4 children between the ages of 5 and 11. I live in a neighborhood that's full of children, and I can tell you that my neighbors are not afraid to have my children play with theirs. They're not afraid to send their children to my home for my wife to tutor them, for them to spend the night, to play with my kids. You know, we talk about 38 states not having these protections, but the fact remains that there are 12 states where these protections exist. And you know, there has been no epidemic of, you know, children coming out of those public school environments profoundly harmed, gender confused.
In California, there was a situation, one case and example where the music teacher transitioned, and so the parents didn't know about it. The parents pulled their kids out of the class. Many of the children were confused.
Oh no, wait!
You know, but
you said the parents couldn't pull their kids out of class, but they did?
In different cases, sometimes they're able to pull their kids out, and sometimes they aren't.
So you said it would make that illegal.
Well, No, it makes it illegal for the teacher, for the school to remove the teacher, because by removing the teacher from the classroom, it will be illegal. The federal government is coming in and telling Virginia, the Carolinas, and the list goes on, that we're going to override your law and we're going to tell you what to do in the classroom with teachers. And you know, the American people don't know what's going on with this bill, but we are at Traditional Values are making sure that they do. We're educating members of Congress. We know now that the leadership in the Congress does not want a lot of debate on this, because they know if the light is shown on this, they lose.
Allyson, is there any room, do you think, for common ground between, you know, your two groups? I mean, do you think that there is a way to legislate fair practices in the classroom that would set up, for example, you know, a way to explain to children
what is going on? Curriculum changes. The curriculum changes too.
I directed that question to me, Andrea, and I'll tell you this: in 1960, when New Orleans schools were desegregated, there was an organization of mostly white women that called themselves Save Our Schools. They marched in front of public schools. They pulled out every scare tactic in the book. They had signs with Bible quotes on them. They had signs equating desegregation with communism. They spit on children and teachers, and they yelled racial slurs at them. That was discrimination in 1960. It's discrimination today. These are the same tactics. You stand in that tradition.
Comparing a mental disorder with how someone is born African American or Hispanic, I know is offensive to the African Americans that our organization represents. It's highly offensive to compare that, to say that a mental disorder is the same.
Well, do you see any room for common ground on this issue? So do you think
we would have no problem with people with a serious mental disorder receiving help, but to give them an elevated status within civil rights, within law, is very different. The school is about kids. It's not about someone's personal issues or agenda. Children need a safe environment, a secure environment, and a stable environment. And to introduce a man who's become a woman is very confusing to children.
Nancy, isn't that something that they will encounter in society regardless?
Perhaps. Maybe, maybe not, but isn't it also, why is it the decision of a small number of people to push this on the children of this country?
Well, and once again, there's a majority of Americans who support these protections.
Oh, not a majority. We'll see.
You know,
we'll see. If gay marriage doesn't pass, even in California, how would transgender teachers in the classroom pass? I don't think so.
And you say a majority of Americans support this based on?
A majority of Americans support the fact that not discriminating against lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender people is a fundamental American value, that people should be judged in the workplace on the basis of one thing, and that's whether or not they can do their job. Miss Lafferty's organization is offending in so many ways, but what about all of those transgender teachers that you're talking about? I mean, first off, how many of them are there? By our counts, less than half a dozen in the last 10 years.
But we have to have some real discussions. What we know from the gay and the transgender community is that most individuals that have so-called sex changes actually don't physically change their sex. So we know that they're female from the waist up and male from the waist down. That is very confusing to children.
Do children see them from the waist
down?
Well,
and that's part of the debate about, and even Barney Frank has said, you can't expose yourself. I personally had this happen to me with my mother and my small child in a pool in the city of Alexandria, Virginia, where transgenders came into the bathroom. And that is a part of the discussion with this bill. And they know when they bring in the bathrooms, they may change the language, but children are going to ask questions. Children understand boys and girls are different. It just adds a whole element of confusion that's unnecessary. Would we bring in other people with a serious mental disorder to teach our children?
If you take the transgender piece out of it, where do you stand on sexual discrimination against gays and lesbians?
But you can't. See, you can't do that because there is a commitment by the gay and transgender community and the leadership of this Congress that it will be a package. So we can only discuss ENDA in relationship to gender identity remaining in the bill, because that is the reality of what we're talking about.
And obviously this bill would have to pass not just the House but the Senate as well.
Yeah.
It passed the House a couple of years ago. The Senate didn't take it up, so what we'll be watching now is whether it does make it out of committee in both the House and the Senate, which have very packed agendas right now, and actually make it to the floor of both houses of Congress before it could be made into law. Andrea and Allyson, I want to thank you both so much for coming in to discuss this. I know it's a tough topic. Andrea Lafferty of the Traditional Values Coalition and Allyson Robinson of the Human Rights Campaign. Thank you both so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.